Dear followers, subscribers. So we're going to carry on with our story today, the story of Goldfoot. And I'm going to bring three different vantage points from how we can look at some of the themes that we've been exploring so far in relation to the story. Now, the first one is the picture that I have behind me, which is of Odin and his two ravens, which is Hugin and Munin. And we're going to look at this in relation to the theme that we've been looking at in relation to the blacksmith and paganism, and developing here a sense for what is the old clairvoyance and how this old clairvoyance has to go through what's described in Norse mythology as the battle of Ragnarok, which is a battle against the Fenris wolf, which is mirroring, paralleling, depicting mankind's descent into materialism. So this was carried many centuries in advance of what mankind as a whole was going to have to go through in the descent into materialism, into therefore those centuries, 19th century and on into our time. And so we're going to, that's the first point. I'm going to look a little bit at the story of Hugin and Munin and how we can understand this in relation to Odin. And I'm going to bring this also in relation to Vidar. And this is something that from anthroposophy from Rudolf Steiner, where he describes how Vidar is an important archangel for our times and how his influence on his inspiration for anthroposophy can be felt in all of the new words that we learn to describe the spiritual that come to us in anthroposophy. So we're going to maybe go into this subject of Vidar at a later stage, but today just look at the story with Odin and Hugin and Munin. That's step one. Step two, I broke off at the end of last week's video, trying to explain, trying to describe the shape of society. Now, this is an important aspect of the whole story of Goldfoot, and one could say in a broader sense, the whole story of the initiation of Mani, of understanding evil and how evil comes to be embodied in society, and how this, through our living in society, we are then challenged by this and we come up against these tests that in many ways people are going to live through in an unconscious way. And this is a theme that I've often spoken about, this unconscious kind of hypnotic living in the present time and the need to awaken to this. So this is how I finished off last time, and we're going to go deeper into this subject in relation to the 6 classes within society. So connecting back to some of the Marxist teachings on these things in relation to proletariat, petit bourgeoisie, old and new petit bourgeoisie, the professional managerial class, a kind of elite, okay, Marx's owners of the means of production, and the bourgeoisie. Now, of course, this is going to be a kind of updated reference to some of these Marxist terms relating to the book by Dan Evans, which I will put this time in the link, which I've been very inspired and encouraged by to read this book. And you can also find more in relation to this on the internet. Part 3, I'm going to then go down into the story of Goldfoot itself and take some of the references, some of the words that were used in the story up to now, and I'm going to just look at some of these vantage points in relation to the first two steps that we're going to outline here. So first of all, Hugin and Moonin. So you can see them here behind. There's also very nice text here. Picture of Odin here with Hugin and Moonin. Now Odin has one eye depicted then behind me, slightly obscured by a lock of hair over his eye. And Odin is this old one, to be one-eyed is this old clairvoyance, and how this, we know from anthroposophy, from Steiner, this description, you can read up about this, about how the old clairvoyance was slowly dying away over the centuries leading up to Golgotha as the turning point of time, and how this old third eye depiction of clairvoyance is fading away, is slow, getting weaker and weaker, and that the human being is then, as humanity as a whole is descending deeper into matter, this has to go through a transformation, and the thinking is then transformed through the Auseinandersetzung, through the confrontation with materialism, with the descent. And we can then think, right at this moment, we can then think of industrialization, those dark satanic mills that are spoken of. And then, but then also call to mind how that has transformed since the 19th century over into the two world wars, and then on into our time now. So I'm going to read through this. I'm going to read through this story here of Odin, Hugin, and Moonin, and just have a look at them behind. He's sitting here with the two wolves, looking quite like dogs here. The two wolves. This is another depiction of Odin, which is quite easy. One that's quite easy to find. This is the other depiction. So here's a better view of his blinded eye. And here you have the two ravens, Hugin and Moonin. So Hugin, sometimes this gets mixed up. Hugin and Moonin, which one is which, and how are they related and categorized in relation to memory and thought and thinking. Now, Hugin on here is related to thinking, and Moonin is related to memory. Now, there is a reason why people get this mixed up and they exchange the two, but it is actually important, and you can go into the relation between the letters, and as we know in eurythmy, the difference between the M and the H. Anyway, the deeper you go into this and find resonance in your own inner life, to that extent, you can then have a better appreciation of why exactly it's Hugin and Moonin, and designated in relation to thought and memory in these two aspects. So without further ado, don't worry, it's not a long story. It's about 2 or 3 minutes. So once upon a time, when Odin was walking under the branches of Yggdrasil, 2 ravens descended and settled on his shoulders. The raven on his left was as white as the mist of Niflheim, for all ravens were white then, and the clouds were reflected in his eyes. The raven to his right glistened in the sun like the snow of Jotunheim, looking at him with bright, clear eyes. And Odin called the raven on his right hand Hugin, that is thought, and the other he called Munin, that is memory. The days passed, and Hugin and Munin were as curious as the All-Father about everything in the 9 worlds. They flew around, watched and listened as much as they could, and in the evening they returned to him to tell him all that they had seen and heard during the long hours of the day. They told him about the slow thoughts of the mountains, the colorful and ever-changing memories of the people, and the sound of the song in the heart of everything that lives. And although Odin was pleased with the knowledge they brought, he always felt that they had missed something, and he said, "That was a lot, but not enough. Tomorrow you have to fly again. Try to rest now." And the ravens slept restlessly because they did not know what they had missed. And every morning they flew out again. It came one of the many evenings after another long day, when they had seen again everything that Suna's splendor could show, when they had listened to the bright thoughts of all the people in Midgard and read their waking memories, when Hugin said to Munin, "We cannot return, it's not enough, we have to fly even further." And they flew on into the night. And Hugin flew through the dark dreams of the people, not hearing their thoughts, which they did not dare to think during the day, not even in front of themselves. He flew through the black void between the stars, where there was nothing at all, and on into the dawning world of the future, where there is everything and nothing at the same time. And when he returned, his feathers were black as night from tip to tip. And Munin flew through people's minds to the shady corners and basements where they hid all the things they didn't like and locked them away, saying, "I don't remember." He floated through the soulless emptiness of Kinnungagap and on till he arrived at the ashes of Ragnarok, which darkened this age from the next. And when he returned, his feathers were black as soot from beak to tail. The ravens returned to Odin just before dawn, when the night is darkest. And when they sat down on his shoulders again, he knew everything they had seen. And they did not need to tell him. And he understood what was missing, nodded and said, "It's a lot. And it's enough. For tonight, you can rest." And the ravens squinted sleepily in the first rays of the rising sun, which glittered on their now black plumage, tucked their beaks under their wings, and slept very well. Since that time, all ravens have been as black as a shadow on a starless night. It's very rare for someone to see a white raven. And if you're lucky enough to see one, then you know you've wandered far away and back to the land of memory before the ravens turned black. Now, there's some very lovely pictures here, imaginations that are very, very helpful for us to draw in relation to Goldfoot. And I'd just like to go through a number of them here and just pull out a number of the things that we're going to look at in relation to Goldfoot. So first of all, we have the designation Hugin and Munin, thought and memory. Now, first of all, Hugin's going out. They flew around, they watched and listened as much as they could. And in the evening, they returned to tell him all that they had seen during the long hours of the day. So his clairvoyance, Odin's clairvoyance, contained in his subjectivity. He's not, the two ravens go out and see the things that he's not able through waking consciousness to partake of. The thoughts of the mountains, the colorful and ever-changing memories of the people. These are like, the ravens are like informants for him. Going out in another place, it talks about they're like spies telling him of what his enemies are thinking, what they are planning. So all this is like a kind of intelligence service for Odin at this time. So his waking consciousness, they're supplementing it. They're supplementing this clairvoyance that in the day is waning. And the song in the heart of everything that lives. So this is this aspect of Hugin. This raven is telling us all of life is thinking. The mountains, the trees, the rivers, what people are thinking in their memories, which is a very nice bridge then between Hugin and Munin. It describes here that he sees the thinking that is going on within the people as they live through their day. So again, the emphasis that day consciousness, that Odin needs this supplementary activity of the two ravens. And although Odin was pleased with the knowledge they brought, and this is a very, very lovely depiction, he said that was a lot, but not enough. And within this, we have this great longing for the spirit that accompanies mankind through this descent into this waning clairvoyance. Tomorrow, you have to fly again. Every day, it's the incessant return of dawn, midday, to dusk, to night, to waking again in the morning. And the two ravens say this to themselves: we cannot return yet. It is not enough. We have to fly even further. This desire, this drive for knowledge. And they then flew on into the night. So after this daylight consciousness with its two pillars of dawn and dusk, Hugin and Munin are then recognizing that the drive of the human the human soul is to extend this knowledge, to realize that beyond this, they would have to then fly on into the night. Now, it's very, I don't know if anyone else picked this up, but if you notice, it's Hugin, when Hugin returns and sees there's so much that he doesn't know of. And again, we can relate this straight back to what Steiner talks about in anthroposophy, about the need for us to develop this very, very deep humility for what it is, for the great mysteries that we are yet to understand, that we are yet to know. And when he comes back, his feathers are as black as night from tip to tip. When Munin comes back, his feathers also turn black, but there the description is from beak to tail. And this is a very lovely depiction here of the widths that Hugin has from tip to tip of his feathers, of his wingspan. He is the extension out over space, whereas Munin from beak to tip, from beak to tail, the whole span of his body, we're creating here the cross. So here we then also have a very imaginative and powerful depiction of how this cross is formed between the expanses of space and the depths of time. So we also know from the first class from Rudolf Steiner, these three abysses, the abyss of space, the abyss of time, and the abyss of the human heart, that all these three form one abyss together. Another depiction here, when we come to mooning in terms of memory, everything, I found this very, very helpful. So for your own inner meditations on these things, it describes this relation of mooning to everything where you say, I don't remember. And we know from the foundation stone, practice spirit remembrance. What is it that we shut off to ourselves through telling ourselves all the time that I don't remember? Now, we may not consciously be doing this, but the first step here is to recognize the possibility, and this also comes through anthroposophy and in many of the ancient traditions and still contained in Buddhism and Hinduism, is that we go through reincarnation, and former incarnations are the things that we don't remember, which still influence very much many of the things that we're doing within the day. And indeed, our thinking through the day, as the bridge was made between our thinking, what are our memories thinking? And what are the memories that lie behind the memories of this life? The ravens return to Odin just before dawn when the night is darkest. So again, we've got this whole dichotomy between the brightest, the lightest light and the darkest dark. The ravens squinted sleepily at the first rays of the rising sun, which glittered on their now black plumage. And maybe I'll just finish with this section with this, is that there is, within mythology, we often have the depiction in art history of the magpie, which is a combining of this black and white. Now here we're talking about how the whiteness of the ravens has become completely black. And inwardly, what I'm encouraging us to do is to recognize this awe, this grandeur of the whole spiritual path, the spiritual world that we're moving towards and within, that the vastness of this, the awe of this, is something that we're encouraged to develop here. And the more that we sense this, the more that this deepens in us, we are actually transforming everything that was white from just a theoretical kind of touching of a clairvoyance that had to die away, how that is transforming into black. And the magpie combines the two. And one of the things that I like very much is the old British tradition is when you see a magpie, you say, my regards to your lovely wife. And there's a deep, deep wisdom in this saying. You say, good morning, Mr. Magpie. My regards to your lovely wife. So, the shape of society. Now, this is the shape of society. Sorry to repeat there. This is a post that I did today, and I'm titling this Spiritualized Marxism. Now, as I'm talking about this, I want to carry over what I've just said from about Hugin and Munin and Odin to emphasize that the the relation of this to the blacksmith and to paganism and the move from the old clairvoyance into the preparation for the birth of new clairvoyance, which is coming then accompanying this descent into materialism and then into the times of industrialization and on into our times. And if we think back to the first videos that I've done about Goldfoot, this path of initiation of the apprentice and how he comes into, he has to take his position as an apprentice to the blacksmith as a way of coming deeper into this path of initiation and the challenges that faces him, as we looked at previously. All of this relates to the confrontation with evil, and a lot of this has to do with the shape of society that grows up around humanity as it crosses the threshold and as it prepares for this crossing over the threshold, which Steiner speaks of as in the middle of the 19th century. So we have industrialization, we have all the move to the towns, we have all of these things that play such a big role in Marx. So I hope this wasn't distracting you and that you were able to see this chart that I did. I'm basing this on a very good book by Dan Evans, which he's released in 2023. Very engaging, nicely written, very recommendable book. And it's called The Rise of the Petit Bourgeoisie. There's a subtitle text, A Nation of Shopkeepers. Now, the argument I'm making here is that this in no way is just related to the UK. So this is a process that all countries are going through, and more or less in a time of globalization, this is a situation for all countries of the world, that we all now live so dominated by the neoliberal, in Marxist terms, capitalist shape of society, that these phenomena then become realities for everyone who lives and grows up and is educated and works and exists in this condition. So the depiction I have attempted to draw here is with these two triangles. Now, these two triangles, if you put them together, we have the Star of David. And please don't be put off by the writing here, calicivirus. This is to do with my cat. So you don't have to excuse the not perfect presentation here. But yeah, my cat, this is something that my cat has. And in some kind of weird kind of way, it might be interesting to think also about how disease, illness, can be shaped and is also affected by the resistant powers that have an effect on our astrality, how we are related to the other living beings around us, our pets, our relationships, our karma. So without going too far down that track, it's something to also reflect on as I go through and try to outline these 6 different classes. So with the move from agricultural, feudal-based societies into eras of industrialization, we have the move into the cities. And then we have the great development of the working class. And if you think then of the terraced road houses that you see crisscrossing all of Britain when you fly over it, you can have a good, that's probably the best imagination that you can have of this now. Now we have the big skyscrapers and things like that. But in those days, you had your box, your cabin, little toilet outside. You could grow your own vegetables, and you had those working class communities. That's what Marx is calling the proletariat. Now, in those days, you then had the petty bourgeoisie, which is the shopkeepers. And this is then the title, the nation of shopkeepers. Now, Evans is arguing that this is what is called the old petty bourgeoisie, whereas the new petty bourgeoisie is all of the people that have then gone through university education, which is now far higher than it ever was. So in the past, it was like 3% of the population going to university. Is this a good thing? Is this a bad thing? That's a question for another time. But it's related to what we're looking at here. If you have then, and this happened in the UK through the 90s, Tony Blair, this is also when I went to university, you have then 50% of the population going to university. Has the class system changed? No, not in its fundamental or not in its basic structure. You've just got a lot of very, very what one could say overeducated people, and not the positions for those people to bring those things into the world. So this is where you have this bar here. You have the old petty bourgeoisie at the top of the triangle, forming the line. The new petty bourgeoisie, overeducated, fulfilling all of the new service type jobs within society. And then you have the working class. Now, do we have, again, this has all become more complicated, and this is what Dan Evans' book is about. Do we have a proletariat? Do we have a working class here? Or do we have a lot of this, what we used to call the working class, become new petty bourgeoisie, lots of education and self-employed, founding their own small businesses, and we have the kind of shopkeeper type old petty bourgeoisie. So this, I think, it's very helpful to depict it like this. And then you have, you know, the development of the sort of crime, drugs and crime industries that exist as a kind of what he describes as a glass floor and a glass ceiling. So for the working class petty bourgeoisie and new petty bourgeoisie, there is a glass ceiling that you don't come above. And the fear of ever falling lower creates what, in a very lovely way, how he describes the frenzy and anxiety of people within these classes. And this is this status anxiety. Do I have the right house? Do I have the right car? Am I successful in that sense? And all of this anxiety, what he describes as a frenzy, is what on this lower triangle leads a lot of people into mental health crises and the struggle within today's kind of neoliberal societies. Above this, you have a glass floor. Now, the triangle above is then a glass floor where people from this class never fall under. So I think this is a great insight. Even the word itself, the professional managerial class. So think of bosses within corporate companies or CEOs. If they lose one job after a couple of years, in fact, often the tenure is going to be 2 or 3 years, and then you simply move into another very highly paid job. The glass floor is there, so you're never going to really fall. You're never even going to really have that anxiety of falling from the professional managerial class. And Dan Evans speaks very nicely in something I also observed going to university. You have people from lower classes, yes, going to university. For the upper classes, from people from this class and from the bourgeoisie, their sole purpose in going to university is simply to network, a kind of old boys network. We will that will determine the career and job that you will get according to your contacts. So it's really a place where university is then less really about ability, more really ticking those boxes and meeting the right people. And I think this is a helpful insight. He was describing how people who have come up the other way from the working class and the petit bourgeoisie don't always have those qualities of character that are going to be able to, they're still going to be excluded in a sense from these other classes. So what he's kind of pointing out here is the myth of social mobility and the wake-up call after the 90s that really what some are even talking about now is a return to feudalism, where you have an elite, a bourgeoisie, a professional managerial class dominating and just determining that the system perpetuates itself and just continues. So what I'm putting at the top here is the elite, the occult, or the old religion. And again, this is where I'm going beyond Dan Evans and bringing it more in relation to anthroposophy and the things we look at in terms of hypnosis and the occult, and recognizing that the use of occult manipulation, whether it comes through advertising or through other nefarious influences on society, this is what we're putting at the top. So really, knowledge still is going to be at its very highest understood as true knowledge of the occult, and how this then can be used to shape society, and how it flows into the sciences and the ideologies with which society is shaped, formed, and directed. It's directed by the professional managerial class. Now, on the other end of this line, you have the bourgeoisie, so the traditional bourgeoisie, those who own the property, those who own the means of production, along with the elite occult, and the professional managerial class of those who simply shape the ideology so that the system can perpetuate itself and everyone is sitting pretty and things don't need to change. Reactionary, yeah, of course, to say the least. And again, this would be understanding how this system works is also what Marx's work was all about. This, putting it in this sixfold form, I think is particularly helpful. And I'm relating it also to the six-petaled lotus in the center of the body. Now, why am I doing this? Because in Knowledge of Higher Worlds, Steiner speaks about how the balance of our physical desires and needs in relation to the whole human being, and how we can find a harmonious balance between these things, is only possible when we've educated ourselves enough on the spiritual path to start to do some of this work down into the body. And this, right in the center of the body, we have this six-petaled lotus. I'm bringing this in. It might be helpful if you want to also think of it like this, but I'm bringing this in relation to these six classes of society, because it's very much how the spirit can come down into matter, and recognizing our roles in relation to these six different classes. And for me, it's helpful. Think about the people you know, think about the work that you do. Where are you in this structure? Are you within a structure underneath which there is a glass bottom? Are you within the bourgeoisie? Are you within the occult? And think of the lifestyles that different people within these different classes live. So from the elite, maybe you are managing vast funds, billions, millions. Professional managerial class, yeah, you're also doing very nicely, but the life you're living is going to be very different. You might have interests in art, property. You might have no national ties at all when you're in this category. Within this category, you're still going to be bound more locally. And the bourgeoisie, I guess you could also describe this here in terms of time. What do you do with your time? Here you might still be employed with a corporate, for example. Whereas these two other areas, are you just concerned with the management of your own estate? Are you concerned with the development of your own level of understanding of arts and literature? Are you educating yourself? Are you founding new companies? But it's a different kind of lifestyle. And it's important, I think, to empathize into the different levels of where is the anxiety here. Now, anxiety is an important word when we look at this, because we're looking at the challenge that comes with the descent into materialism, is that challenge of fear of materialism and what we call in anthroposophy Ahriman. And recognizing how fear manifests in these six classes. Yeah. So right at the bottom, we have the working class, fear of literally living through each day, getting through each day, working traditionally in a factory, problems with ill health, problems with sustaining the family, problems with food. Petit bourgeoisie, to be the incessant need to be continually working, continually checking the books, continually having the whole family working towards your aims and desires. The new petit bourgeoisie, faced with not finding the work that their education has prepared them for, and again, perhaps need to go and work in a cafe or in another form of work to which their education, you can only have so many lecturers in the world. The anxiety of the professional managerial class, is there anxiety here? Yeah. You have the hierarchy, the different hierarchies of bosses, your supervisor reporting to their supervisor, you being appraised, you needing to perform at the board meeting, you needing to present topics and to get things right. And if you don't get it right and you don't do it right, then your head's on the line. Bourgeoisie, property prices, okay, and then the sort of general status anxiety of others in your class, and also the kind of fear of perhaps knowing people from this other class here. So Hugin and Moonin So just what gets lost in all of this? What is it that I don't remember covers up in that sixfold description? And to think where we stand in society in relation to that sixfold description. I don't remember. I don't know of that deeper appreciation of the human being going through processes of incarnation to start on a spiritual path. That's one thing that's covered up. The second thing of Hugin, of thinking, is recognizing that our thinking is not just in the neoliberal system and the different class structures and the work world of which we are in. The thinking extends out over all of nature. And this is, again, something that is a challenge for humanity in this descent into materialism, and is presenting. This is where it's helpful to see how the raven, the blackening of the feathers from beak to tail and from tip to tip, is how we form our understanding of going deeper in imagination into our relation to these 6 different classes, for example. That's why I'm bringing this example of the book in relation to Hugin and Munin and to Odin. Now, we're moving beyond this because what I'm trying to do is speak not out of that old clairvoyance, but to speak to a new clairvoyance where we can talk about these things in relation to where humanity is now. And that's what comes through anthroposophy, and that's what I'm trying to speak out of here in terms of an inspiration to see how these things are linked. So this is what I was concluding with. How does the human body, with this 6-petaled lotus in its center, form and challenge the human being to bring this harmony between inner world and outer world, and how through doing this, we wake up to what is it that I have forgotten on the one hand, and what is it that thinks in terms of a relation to the whole of nature, to the starry world around us, to the path of the sun during the day from dawn to dusk, and then over into the night, and the relation to the natural world around us. So moving on to Goldfoot. Where we were up to last time, you can look back on the previous videos for part 1 and part 2. This is part 3. One thing that I thought I would bring to our attention is that the apprentice steps into his apprenticeship with the blacksmith at the age of 15. Now, why is this important? We know through anthroposophy, you have the first 7 years is the build-up of the physical body. The second 7 years is the development of the etheric body. So at the age of 15, he's already been 1 year through the development of the astral body. And this is significant. This is where we see he stepped into, on the morning of the 3rd day, he stepped into this acknowledgement of being at this stage in his development of understanding this, that he's moving from into an astral appreciation of what he's going through at this point. And this is where he has to pretend that he had seen and heard nothing of what he had seen the blacksmith do the day before. So secondly, we had night observation. that you will I'm just trying to find it in the text. But night observation, again, in the story of Hugin and Munin, at some point the two ravens have to fly over into the night to extend the range of their observations. And again, this is I'm trying to, it's somewhere, a little maiden. So this is the maiden who watches the apprentice work from morning to night. So as in the story of Hugin and Munin, they are doing Odin's work for him from morning to night. And here this is transformed into the little maiden who was beautiful as day and chaste as a saint. Meanwhile, she watched the apprentice work from morning to night. So we see that this is slowly transforming into a much more complex story, and is what I'm asserting here is that this is a deeper aspect of the same challenges, especially as we've previously mentioned, in relation to the challenge of evil and mani, of dark and light, of how this relates to the natural world, and then how this position of observation, which the apprentice is first in when he watches the blacksmith turn into an otter, and how this study, this observation about how these things fit together. I'll just remind us here, this is a quote from the story of Hugin and Munin. O'er Midgard, Hugin and Munin both each day set forth to fly. For Hugin I fear lest he come not home, but for Munin my care is more. So the care is more for Munin that he has forgotten. And this is the path back for our apprentice here, is to the path back from a forgetting to a remembering of who he is, and a retrieving of his identity away from the blacksmith, as he is an apprentice himself on the process of initiation. Now here, this is where we looked at last time. Master, I obey you. The next day, early in the morning, the apprentice came to the castle of Lagarde with his tools. Immediately after breakfast, he set to work. He did not lack gold and silver, nor diamonds and precious stones. O master, he thought, time is near when thou shalt know if there be indeed a multitude of things which I shall never be able to work. And the apprentice forged gold and silver. He set up the diamonds and precious stones. Never before did one see so many such beautiful rings, necklaces, and earrings, and never again will one see such. Master and servants in the castle of Lagarde praised the apprentice unceasingly, with the exception of the youngest daughter of the Marquis of Fimacon, a little maiden who was beautiful as day and chaste as a saint. Meanwhile, she watched the apprentice work from morning to night. Now, for earlier in the text, it's described here that the apprentice pretended to not be so skilled, for he feared to make the blacksmith envious. Now we see here that this learning to take on a role And this is something very fundamental to the whole system that we've been looking at. Taking on a role or a job is to take on the need to pretend to fulfill a role so that you can become, let's say, a cog in a wheel, a cog in a system to make that whole thing function like clockwork. And this imagination of the whole capitalist neoliberal system as a great machine, and the need within this machine to perform one's role, it's very nicely depicted in this sentence of the need that he pretended to be not so skilled, for he feared to make the blacksmith envious. And this sentence one could meditate on very deeply in relation to what is it that this system values, and what is it that we need to repress, suppress in order, and what do we need to develop in order to fit in the different social environments that we're in. And this would be the key to understand the social basis of hypnosis and of education and of how our psychology is formed within the system that we are part of. Now, the maiden, I'll go on to the next passage. Finally, one day when they were alone, the little maiden began to talk. Apprentice, dear apprentice, you are making quite beautiful things for my older sister. Would you work even better if it were for another maiden? Tell me. Yes, little miss, if I had a sweetheart, I would make for her a gold necklace that has no equal. Apprentice, dear apprentice, who would this golden necklace, a beautiful necklace of yellow gold? Sorry. Apprentice, dear apprentice, who would this golden necklace look like that has no equal? Tell me. Who would this golden necklace be for? Oh, no. It was correct. Sorry. Apprentice, dear apprentice, who would this golden necklace look like? What? Dearie me. What would this golden necklace look like that has no equal? Tell me. For my beloved little missy, I would make a golden necklace, a beautiful necklace of yellow gold and radiant as the sun. This necklace I would take glowing from the red hearth and would harden it in a bowl with my blood. When the hardening is finished, I will throw it back into the red chimney while my beloved exposes herself to the girdle. Then I will put the beautiful golden necklace around her neck, and it will be firmly connected to her flesh, so firmly that neither God nor the devil will be able to tear it off. There is an incredible amount of deep esoteric wisdom in this paragraph, because we see through this observation, we have moved on from the observation of the two ravens. We've moved into this situation where the maiden and the apprentice are observing each other. And the description here is that the apprentice is not just making beautiful things for the maiden's older sister. This would be the contract that has been given from the the work contract that is commissioned to the blacksmith. That's what he would need to fulfill, the role he would need to fulfill according to the place within the class system, within the system as a whole. But he doesn't say this. She then says, would you work even better if it were for another maiden? And this is the secret here, that the whole path of the whole of humanity over the threshold and into these systems is within this. There is another secret esoteric development potentially taking place. And what the apprentice and the maiden are showing us here is this is some of the physical manifestations of how this can work into the human body. So firstly, he says, tell me, sorry, she says, tell me, yes, little miss, if I had a sweetheart, I would make for her a gold necklace that has no equal. These are where the secrets of the system are going to be revealed. So first of all, we have a gold necklace. A beautiful necklace of yellow gold and radiant as the sun. This necklace I would take glowing from the red hearth and would harden it in a bowl with my blood. This joining then of the two triangles that we looked at previously, one reaching up to the spirit and one connecting down into the earth. The bowl, the chalice, and a scepter we could speak of, but we have two circles here with the necklace and the bowl. When the hardening is finished, I will throw it back into the red chimney while my beloved exposes herself to the girdle. Then I will put the beautiful gold necklace around her neck, and it will be firmly connected to her flesh, so firmly that neither God nor the devil will be able to tear it off. All of this is talking about what happens when we join together the two triangles. We have the upper triangle and the lower triangle, which is known to many traditions of esoteric traditions. By virtue of this beautiful necklace, my beloved will belong to no one but me and think of no one but me. As long as I am well, the beautiful golden necklace will remain yellow. But when misfortune is upon me, it will turn red like blood. Then my beloved has 3 days to get ready. She must say to her parents, I'm going to die. Bury me in my wedding dress with a veil and a wreath of orange blossoms on my head and a bouquet of white roses at my belt. On the 3rd day, she will fall asleep. Everyone will think she is dead. Then she will be buried in these robes, and sleeping on, she will continue to live as long as the calamity is upon me. When I die, she is lost. But when misfortune is no longer over me, I will come to wake her, and then we will marry each other. Within this paragraph, we have the whole challenge that we're trying to outline here. Within this descent, this challenge with evil, with the resistant powers that come into society with the fall of the spirits of darkness, this is what we're confronted by all the time with life within this system. And these two sentences, first of all, describe how this can show us the binding of the two triangles in the inner world between masculine and feminine, first of all, and secondly, how this relation to calamity, to the need to go through the tragedy and the struggle and the path of spiritual unfoldment is how we confront these challenges that come from the various resistant powers as they are shaped around us. So all of the different depictions here, from the golden necklace to the orange blossoms to the bouquet of white roses at my belt, are showing these different levels, from astral to etheric to physical. These are different symbolic representations. And again, without explaining it all to death, it's good to go into these things and to feel, what does it feel like, a golden necklace that sets into the skin? What does it feel like, the orange blossoms? Which of the bodies is this relating to? What does it feel like, the white bouquet and roses around the belt? So the encouragement from the story here is to go into these inner imaginations, to awaken ourselves to these inner imaginations and see how they relate to our different bodies, and to start to feel and inwardly experience them. And all of this is on is like a light-filled alternative to the blackness of the first part. And if we relate this right back to the white and black of Hugin and Munin, and seeing how that the light starts to awaken out of the darkness, out of the black feathers of Hugin and Munin, and how that light is rising newly away from the old clairvoyance of Odin and now into this new clairvoyance that perceives the light that flows through some of these descriptions. For example, in the wreath of orange blossoms is an incredibly bright inner picture for something that is going on here spiritually. The gold, the glowing gold of the necklace, and how this sinks into the skin. And then the bouquet of white roses. All of these colors and inner experiences of newly found color in relation to these two characters is something quite incredible. That is part of how the apprentice is growing in his inner perception as he goes through this story. So to finish off, hopefully to recapitulate to the last video, we were looking at the previous video at the blacksmith and the snake goddess, where we looked at these two figures from Flash Gordon with Ming and Aurora. So again, I would encourage you to look at this juxtaposition between Ming and Aurora and what we've just looked at in the text between the apprentice and the maiden. We have two different experiences of the spiritual world. One, the new clairvoyance, and I would suggest one, the old clairvoyance that we can see here very nicely in the whole pomp and circumstance of Ming and the kind of very seductive get up of Aurora here. And what we also looked at last time in relation was how this relates to the natural world. And here this is, okay, it's an easy comparison to make, but between Flash Gordon and Fitzgerald here from Midsummer Night's Dream, the look, the gazes here of curiosity, sympathy, peace are very different to the previous ones that we looked at from Ming and Aurora. Anyway, hope you liked that. I hope we managed to weave some of the threads between these things. If you want, you can go back to part 1 and part 2, which, as we slowly build up the story, I'll put some of the passages in the text below for as we're progressing through this, and then if you want the posts about Odin, Hugin, and Munin, and as we go along, some of this I'll be posting also in the on Patreon and in the Facebook Anthroposophicum group. So yeah, until the next time, part 4 coming up, and I'll be doing that soon. All the best.